Hello, Círculos. This video is all about exploring scholarly research. I am in chapter 4 right now, so if you want to follow along, you can go to page 118 where it goes over scholarly research links. And we will be posting all of these links on Canvas, so all you need to do is simply click on the link. So we'll be posting the PDF of this page, and all of these links are live, so you can simply click to go to those sources. As you notice, I have three categories of sources. The first column are those that are news and publications that are good for initial background information. So this means these are articles like in the New York Times or in timemagazine.com where you will have really great pieces written by journalists, but those journalists don't have PhDs in those topics. But what they do is they reference peer-reviewed scholarly research articles or data or studies that are often linked. So this is a great way to just get that initial research and also to find hyperlinks to other better credible sources. So we're not saying no completely to these initial background information sources, but you may use these, but you will not be able to cite them in your sources or use textual evidence from these sources for your proposals and your research papers. The second column shows better resources. So these are scholarly citations and information sites like the Pew Research Institute, the United Nations. These are places that have different statistics and resources that you could use for data. The second column goes over resources that you can use that are a little bit better. So these are organizations like the Pew Research Institute, which publishes statistics and data about different trends across the nation. You could also use different sites like government sites and the ACLU, where you can, or places where you can find laws and court cases if you need to look up like the legal history of something. And then finally, we have that third category, which is called scholarly or educational. This is the best type of resource. So these are peer-reviewed scholarly research articles, and I will go over what that is. So scholarly articles are ones that you can find through a really good internet search. So we want you to find the free ones, all right? So what I did here was I put in fast fashion scholarly articles into my Google search engine, and I found a few really great resources, including ones from the University of Notre Dame, one from Semantic Scholar, Oxy Scholar. Here I have one that's like a full PDF. Let's go ahead and click on the one by the University of Notre Dame. And so here we have an article by it's called Fashion Theory, Volume 16, Issue 3. So basically, this is a peer-reviewed journal article that was published by several authors. You can see the authors are listed on the left side bottom. The title of this article is called Fast Fashion Sustainability and the Ethical Appeal of Luxury Brands. So I know that since this was published by the University of Notre Dame, that this is a scholarly article that was reviewed by people who, like panels and board members who look over different articles and test their statements, and sometimes they'll do like background information checks, they'll look at their literature review, sometimes even like scientific experiments, they'll redo the experiment to see if it's replicable, if their findings are replicable, so that no one like lied about their conclusions or the implications of their project. So this is basically what a research study looks like. So peer-reviewed scholarly research simply means that a group of people that are experts in that field and who usually work in universities, who are scholars, who have PhDs, and who also work with publishing on different journal articles, they will review someone's research paper or their experiment or their study, and then they will test everything and either approve of it or decline it. So what that or reject it, which means that they have to go back and fix their paper before it can be published, or they have to redo their research or something. So basically, it's like they only publish things that are true and credible and believable and have good enough research to back it up. And they usually have all of these references at the end, so it's cross-referenced. They don't just make things up. It uses the information and the findings that other scientists in that field have also found out. So a peer-reviewed research article is one of the best kinds of sources to use for your research papers and your scholarly proposals. So in my pursuit of finding great resources for my research, I went and looked up that scholarly research articles for fast fashion on Google, and one of the hits that came up was JSTOR Daily. So JSTOR is a research database that has all kinds of articles about, or articles that are peer-reviewed. So articles that were written by university professors and scientists and researchers, and many of these articles were published in big journals like the Journal of Medicine or of Sociology and Anthropology, like all kinds of famous journals. And it's a database, so it basically holds and stores all of these journals in one place, and it usually costs money. So I'm going to show you guys today how you can find resources where it's free and it doesn't cost money. When I did my Google engine search, I put in JSTOR Daily and I wrote in fast fashion, and I found this article called What Price Fast Fashion. And so this is an article that was written by JSTOR Daily, which is their online publication, and it's not necessarily like, this article is not a peer-reviewed article. However, as you can see, there are all these hyperlinks in that red with a little J next to it. That means that they're referring or referencing or linking to actual journal articles. So let me give you an example of one. So this one is called Vertical Integration and Rapid Response in Fashion Apparel. But as you can see, they only offer you a preview, and it costs $30 to download, as it says on the top right corner, and we are not going to be paying for that. So if I go back to that article, I see another link called The Law, Culture, and Economics of Fashion. And so this one, it looks like I can download the PDF, so it is free, and it's about 53 pages. So anytime you have something that's about 53 pages, your mentor or myself, we can tell you which pages you definitely need to read and print, like the intro and the conclusion, and which pages you don't need to, because we don't expect all of you to print out 53 pages each and read 53 pages for just one article, especially when you need 5 articles if you're a freshman and 8 if you're a sophomore and junior. And this type of article is kind of more of like a mini book, and it was written by students in the law school at Stanford University. So law schools usually have a publication called a law review, and so this is from the Stanford Law Review. It's very credible, and it has different subchapters. So in this case, instead of reading all 53 chapters, you may only want to read maybe the chapter that pertains to your topic or driving question. Okay, so here's another resource. This one is called Waste Couture, Environmental Impact of the Clothing Industry. And the awesome thing is that it's free, and all 8 pages, yay, I'm glad it's not too long of an article, all 8 pages are available for me via PDF. So I'm going to go ahead and print it or download it. So I would like everyone to also download or print their own copies. Every single person in your group needs their own copy, because every person in the group needs to annotate on their own and complete an article tag on their own. So even though you have the same exact article, you all need your own. Now let's say you don't want to print. You can also download a source, or you can download an app called Cami. It's an add-on, and it allows you to highlight, circle, draw arrows, and write and annotate on articles and PDFs through your Google Drive. So this is a really great app that you can find on the G Suite Marketplace. If you need help downloading this or using it, feel free to stop by the Flex Lab, and Ms. Park or Mr. Davis can help you. Be sure to look at the Círculos tips on scholarly research in your booklets, and then there's also the BRAB about background, reliability, accuracy, and bias. I'll talk about that in a minute when we do the article tag. So let's go over the article protocol. So every time you find an article, you must read the article, and then you must annotate the article, and we have steps to annotate. There's 5 steps, and I'll go over those with you guys in a second, and then you must complete an article tag. So I'm actually going to go over all 3 steps with you right now. So this was the article that I found with you guys, and I just downloaded it. I downloaded it to my desktop, and then I went ahead and read it and annotated it, because that was the first 2 steps of the article protocol. So when you do any annotations, you have to make sure that you really engage with the text, right? So I'm going to read it one time, then I'm going to number and chunk the parts. I'm going to highlight the main ideas. I'm going to question it and ask good questions if I have questions that that it inspires me to have. And then I'm going to put exclamation points next to things that I'm curious about or that were surprising to me or interesting to me. So as you can see, I did lots of arrows, I wrote comments, I highlighted things, I defined words I didn't know, I put stars around things that were the main idea. I did many different things with the text to understand it. If you don't do this, then it's very difficult to figure out what the text is saying, and this is a really great tip for you to use even in college, as you will be reading so many more of these types of articles that frankly are very difficult and higher level, so we want to provide you with these tools to do so. So here you can see I wrote out like this part is the introduction, and then in another part I wrote out definition and origin where they talked about fast fashion. Here you can see in the margins, I saw something where it said that girls especially are insatiable when it comes to fashion. They have to have the latest thing, blah, 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 blah. So then I asked, wait, are these just girls? Are other groups also consumers of fast fashion? What about boys? What about men and women? What about the poor or the rich? Who impacts fast fashion? Who buys the most fast fashion? Because I feel like that oversimplified it. So I wanted to look into that a little bit more. I also learned that, did you know polyester is made from petroleum, which is basically how we have gas, right? So oil or petroleum, it fuels our cars, and it also fuels polyester, which is what most of our clothing is made of. So now I thought of, wait, this is another way that fast fashion and the clothing industry impacts our environment and releases gases into the air and affects our ozone layer and all of that stuff. And then I also noticed that this article is from 2007, which means it's about 12 years old, which means it might kind of be dated, but I think it still will have pretty good information for me. And I also noticed that the article is, let's see, it's written by Luz Claudio, and it's in a source called Environmental Health Perspectives, Volume 115, number 9. So this is a really credible source. It is a government agency, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. So I know that this is in that third column of credibility. It is probably the best type of source that I can find. So I went ahead and carefully annotated the entire article. I am going to be posting this annotated PDF on Canvas so you can see exactly how I annotated it, how I labeled everything, circled, highlighted, wrote comments, wrote questions, wrote out main ideas. This is really important for you to do. I want the articles to be completely marked up with different colors, different ideas. I know that you learned how to annotate in Mr. Garcia's English class, so you have to put in that same thoroughness into these articles as well. Everybody needs to annotate their very own copy of the articles. So what you can do this week is to ask Mr. Garcia, who has a big printer, your mentor teacher, or the Flex Lab, either Mr. Davis or Ms. Park, to print out your articles for you. If you like to read on paper and highlight on paper and write comments, we can print all those articles for you, and then you can annotate and complete article tags at home over the break. What we don't want is for you to say, oh, I didn't have the printout, so I couldn't do anything. That's not an excuse, because it's your responsibility to print out these articles and annotate them. And like I mentioned earlier, you can also print these, you can also download them onto your Google Drives and use Cami, the Google add-on, to digitally annotate and edit. You must have your own annotations. We are not copying each other's because everyone has their own brains. So if you have 3 people in the group, you may not have the exact same annotations, since you will all annotate differently because you have 3 different minds. All right, so let's move on. Now that you have annotated the article, we're going to go to the third step in the protocol, which means complete an article tag. We included many article tags in your booklets. We have 10 article tags for you guys, and so that is in the section on scholarly research. And what you can do is when you print out your articles, you can stick them right behind your article tags, or you can cut out your article tags and staple them to your articles. That's why they're called article tags, because you tag it onto your article. Okay, so let's do our first one together. So I'm going to be doing this on that fast fashion on the environmental impact of the clothing industry article that I just found. So here I'm going to go ahead and write number 1. I'm going to write my name. I'm going to go ahead and write my mentor teacher, my group ID, topic, and driving question. I don't quite have a driving question yet, so I'm going to leave that part NA, not applicable yet. Okay, so the next part is where I just have to copy and paste or just copy down what the article provides. So the title of the article, the date of publication, the name of publication, the journalist, and the URL of the article. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Here's the article's, the title, Waste Couture, Environmental Impact of the Clothing Industry. I'm going to go put that into my article box, the title of the article. The date of publication is September 2007. The name of the publication is the Environmental Health Perspectives, and it's also published by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Then we have September 2007 as the date of publication, and then we have Luz Claudio as the journalist. It also says that this is a blank. It's a scholarly source, a government source, and an organization source. It's not a news source necessarily because it's not like a news article from a newspaper. And I'm saying it's a government source because I do know that the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences is a government agency. And I'm also going to copy and paste the URL. All right, let's go on to the most important part, the credibility checker. This is where we check the background, relevancy, accuracy, and bias, the BRAB, of the article. Now, it's really important that we do this. You might want to do this first before you even start reading your article because it needs to get a 9 or higher out of 15 points in order for it to be approved as an article you can use for your research. If it receives an 8 or lower, that means it's not good enough. It's not credible enough for you to use to cite in your sources for your proposals or for your research papers. So you might want to do the BRAB first. And then if something is like an 8 or below, then don't even bother reading the article because you're not going to be able to use it unless you just use it as like background information and it's not going to count as one of your 5. And so for the first thing it says is to check the author. So the first thing says if the author has a degree or specializes in the topic or does research on this subject for a living. So I looked up Luz Claudio and I found that she is a professor of environmental medicine and public health. And then I also will find that she is basically she does multidisciplinary research. I'm reading all this, and so it's going to show me that yes, the author does have a degree, and yes, she specializes in this topic and she does this for a living. So I know that this is a credible author. So let's go ahead and give her that 1 point for that first part. And then the second part for background says the author has published many works on the subject. So I went down and I scrolled and I found that yes, she has done a lot of research. Let's go down a little bit more and I found, publications. So I'm going to click on that and yes, she has done lots of research. So if I click on see details, and this is just me Google searching her name. I didn't go to this specific website. I just Google searched her name and then I just looked up professors that were named Luz Claudio. And look at all of these research articles that she's published, and many of them are on the environmental impact of different things, on toxins, on pollution. So I know that she does specialize in environmental impact, and she writes a lot about that. So I'm going to go ahead and give her a point because yes, she definitely has published many works on this subject. So 1 point, there we go. The next thing says the author's organization's contact information is available on the website. If you go to the top, you can actually email her. So I'm going to click on the email icon, and it does have a live email account. So if you want, you can even email professors. But before you email people, you definitely need to get that approved and proofread and CC your mentor. So don't just email professors randomly. Okay, the next one, the author has published other articles or has an understanding of the topic. Absolutely. Throughout the entire article, she refers to other articles and books that were written. The organization, company, or institution publishing is well respected. Absolutely. The National Institute for Environmental Health Scientists is definitely an important agency. I meant to put a 5 up there. I don't know why I put a 0, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that. The next one is relevancy. So the article information was published in the last 5 years. This was actually published in 2007, so not quite, so it doesn't get that. The next, the article or site has been updated in the last 2 years. Yes, it has. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a point for it being updated in the last 2 years, but not a point for the part where it says it was published in the past 5 years. Okay, so I went ahead and fix the top part. So now it has 5 out of 5 and then 1 out of 2. Let's do accuracy now. Factual information contained in my article or website can be found in at least 2 other articles or website. Yes, because when I went into the article, there were other books and articles and even data that was referenced, so I definitely know that that information is corroborated. The next part is the opinions and claims made by the author of this article supported by scholarly and expert-led research, primary sources, or data collection. Absolutely. There were lots of data and statistics and things like that that were provided, so it also gets another point for that. And next is the author provides a list of other sources he or she used in the research. Actually, if you look at the end of the research article, there are no sources listed, and I think it might have been because they cut off that part in the PDF, or maybe it comes at the very end of the journal. I think that's kind of strange that they didn't have that whole list of different resources and articles she used in her article. So because it doesn't have that, I'm not going to give it a point. So in this situation, it gets a 2 out of 3. So let's move on to bias. The first bullet point is the article is not published by a political party, religious group, or corporation or group trying to sell something. If this article was sponsored by ExxonMobil, it would be a different story. Just like when YouTubers and Instagram influencers have to tell us when something is sponsored or something is an ad before they review a product or they talk about some like piece of clothing or shoes or some tech gadget or whatever, we have to know if that was a paid for advertisement. It's the same thing. When it comes to research, if research studies were paid for or financially backed by corporations or organizations, then we might have to think twice about it. For example, you probably wouldn't want to believe in a study that was financed by Marlboro, which is a company that makes cigarettes, where they studied the effect of smoking on lungs. Because maybe the researchers and the scientists may not reveal all of the harmful effects and the data because it makes their boss look bad. In the same way, if you had an article that was sponsored by or paid for or an organization that may have different interests than what the scientists are exploring, then that's a big red flag. In this situation, we know that it is not financed or sponsored by a company. It's not like ExxonMobil, told them to do this study and not talk about petroleum and polyester and all of that stuff. So that is not the case here. So in this situation, it gets 1 point for not being backed by a corporation. Number 2, it says there are no ads on this webpage. That is correct. That gets a point. Next, the website URL ends in .edu.gov.org. We know that it does end in .org. It's JSTOR, and it says right there it's not for profit, so it gets a point there. Then it says the article information has more facts and opinions. That is true. It gets a point. And then the last one is the article does not use emotion to appeal to readers. Actually, I'm going to not give it a point for that one because it does use emotion, especially in the beginning where it goes over, it kind of brings you into the story by talking about a group of girls in a mall looking at the latest fashions. And at the end, it gives you like an appeal to the reader, persuading them in the last 2 paragraphs to do something about it, and that only consumers have the power to change the trajectory of, ruining our environment because of fast fashion and all that. So because of that emotional appeal, I'm going to go ahead and not give it a point. So for bias, it gets 4 out of 5. And what you'll notice is 5 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4 is 12 out of 15. That's definitely more than a 9. So in this case, it wins. It becomes a credible source that we can use for our project. Okay, let's move on to the back side. So in this part of the article tag, we're going to go ahead and check all that apply with the author's purpose. This article exists to inform and explain, to persuade and convince, to report facts or findings, and to spread information in academia. So all of those 4 things are checked off because this article is not necessarily there to, be an opinion piece. So even though there is some element of an emotional appeal and where they're trying to persuade you at the end that you should do something as a consumer, it does really just lay out the facts and then give evidence and data and statistics and references to citations as needed. Then the next part, it says, very important step, check it off if you did it. Did you highlight or underline the quotes in the article? Yes, we did. We highlighted everything that was important that we could technically use as textual evidence in our papers, in our essays. We highlighted them in yellow, so we did that. How does this article relate to your research topic? I wrote that it gives background information, it is a launching point for student-led research, and it confirms or reiterates what I found in other articles or research studies. So I found in other articles that fast fashion does impact the environment in a negative way, so I'm going to go ahead and check that off too. I'm just going over this really quickly, but basically you're going to be checking off everything that relates to what your article's purpose is and what it does and what it goes over. Then I'm going to go ahead and put in some hashtags. This is really helpful for my organizational purposes because I know that when I have 5 to 8 articles that I have to start synthesizing into my essays later, I'm going to forget what these articles were about. So in order to not forget and to remember what the main ideas were, I'm going to go ahead and hashtag it. And this is a really great way for our brains to kind of get a lot of information and then process it and then package it in really simple ways. This is a great brain exercise for you. So for my hashtags, I have environmental impact, sustainable fashion brands, organic cotton, consumerism, industrialization, and life cycle. These are all of the main ideas of the article. I just went and looked back at my subheadings, and that's how I came up with my hashtags. Next part is about summarizing the article in 3 sentences. It's really important that we learn how to summarize something that took 8 pages to write into 3 succinct sentences. It's another really great skill and tool for us to learn how to read critically. So here we go. I wrote that this article is about the environmental impact of fast fashion. The article goes over different trends and patterns such as percentages and statistics of the fashion industry, as well as systems such as cheap labor, globalization, consumerism, and the Industrial Revolution as reasons why fast fashion exists today. Next sentence. The article concludes by explaining several ways that the negative impacts can be lessened through other innovative materials, less consumerism, more clothing swaps in secondhand markets, and by increasing awareness among consumers. So these are 3 sentences that I used to describe this entire article. All right, we're almost done with the article tag. The next part, I am going to be circling depth and complexity icons. So I'm going to circle over time and impact because I believe that these 2 words best capture everything that this article was about. So after I go ahead and circle those, I have to write about why I chose them. So I'm going to go ahead and put in over time and impact right here on the bottom boxes, and then I'm going to explain why. So I chose over time because this article shows the evolution of fast fashion over time from the Industrial Revolution until today. It also shows how increasing globalization has made fast fashion a current trend. So a big chunk of this article was about how fast fashion came to be. So that's why I chose over time. It was kind of like a historical background piece. And then I wrote why I wrote impact. I chose impact because the article goes over all the environmental impacts of the fashion industry, such as toxic materials, petroleum and polyester, pesticides in cotton farming, and landfills or solid waste. The author also discussed the impact that consumers can have if they make more informed choices. So it was about impact as a positive thing and a negative thing. So that's why I chose impact. And then finally, the very last thing that I have to do is choose one universal theme topic that's related to this entire article. So if I had to choose one of the 12, I'm sure I can pick more than one, but if I only could pick one, I would pick systems. A lot of different systems were explored in this article, and one of the big systems that it talked about was the life cycle of a t-shirt, and I thought that was really interesting. Something that was really great from reading this article was that it made me more curious. Now I want to watch a documentary that's on Netflix about fast fashion, and there were several books and articles that it referenced as well, so I definitely want to check those out. So that's why scholarly research is so important, and it is going to help you get deeper and deeper into your driving question. It'll even help you rewrite your driving question, which is what I'm planning to do with my fast fashion sample. So go ahead and watch the driving question video if you want to see how this article has helped me rewrite my driving question. Make sure you show your mentor all of your articles and your annotations as well as your article tags. You do need to submit all of your research by the Friday of the week we get back from winter break. That is January 10th. So you do need those driving questions approved by the 13th of December, and they need to be submitted to me by the 18th of December. And then all of your articles, you need 5 if you're a freshman and 8 if you're a sophomore or junior. All of your articles need to be completely annotated, and all of your article tags must be completed as well. Thank you so much, scholars. We look forward to reviewing your scholarly research with you.